Imagine this, it's a warm sunny afternoon in 2000. You're just chilling on Napster looking for the next Britney Spears drop. You check your email and oh, there's a love letter. Shocking, since you are unlovable. So you desperately open it and gibberish. Or so it seems. Well, my friend, in your lonely quest to find love, your computer has been infected, and now all your nerd files and documents have been overwritten, which ironically might cause you to get out and find love, so it is a win-win. Computer viruses, oh how we miss them. It's like that kind of nostalgia where things were like clearly shit in the early 2000s, like Windows XP, but show people this wallpaper and suddenly it brings back good memories. It was good for the time, but trust me, you do not miss Windows XP. There was a time when computer viruses were pretty much everywhere. Like, they're still around now, but they were more ominous back in the day. Real life is more ominous these days. It's also cool to think about viruses in an espionage spy type of way, like these videos, but I can't make those kind of videos, so this is the best I can do. It's not so common these days, because like it or not, Windows is actually pretty secure. So let's go back to the good old days of computer viruses. So the first virus actually showed up in 1971 on the ARPANET. The ARPANET was like the internet before the internet. It was just a bunch of universities connected to each other, and someone wrote the virus Creeper, which I know is a Minecraft reference, but I never really played Minecraft, so. Well, it can't be a Minecraft reference since Minecraft didn't exist in 1971. Who wrote this? It would just move through different computers on the network and display the message, "I'm the Creeper, catch me if you can." Definitely some whimsical white dude. This also caused the first instance of antivirus software called Reaper, to clean computers of Creeper. Get it? Reaper? I got that reference. There were also other instances of viruses at this time, but we are so far back that the primary method of spread for these viruses was magnetic tapes. Like, how hard is it to keep yourself secure from viruses? Don't use tapes, use protection. I don't know, that joke didn't really, but you should be using. Then there was the brain virus made in 1986 by Amjad and Basiq Farooq Alvi from Pakistan. Sorry if I butchered that. I am brown, so. But again, this virus was not malicious. It was just an exercise to see the extent of where it could reach. One of the instances of a truly destructive virus was the Jerusalem virus, which was scheduled to delete all executable files on Friday the 13th. Then in 1988, Robert Tappan Morris became the first person to be convicted under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. He didn't even mean to cause damage. His virus spread apparently due to logic error. I don't know if this guy went to prison, but in the 80s, how do you explain this to your fellow prisoners? Like, oh, I'm in here for rape and murder. What are you in here for? I wrote a computer program. If I was that guy, I would not drop the soap. But then we enter the 90s. Now by the 90s, the internet was around. Like, most of the world was still not on the internet. Like, I found love letters that my dad wrote my mom, which was kind of romantic, but also hella cringe. It just goes to show you that he didn't email or call, he like wrote a physical letter. In the early 90s, less than 1% of the population was on the internet. But by now, it's enough computers to cause trouble. A lot of these 90s viruses were like email attachments, like the Melissa virus, which, if you didn't know, was named after a stripper the author met. That sounds stupid, but also makes sense. It arrived as a Word document attached to an email, which, if you opened it, would send itself to 50 people in your contact book. It mainly caused email congestion and increased server loads, but you know, relatively mild. So what happened to the guy and the stripper? Well, the guy was caught pretty quickly. He got a $5,000 fine and 20 months in prison. And as far as the stripper, all we know is she's from Florida. I need to go to Florida. But that was nothing compared to the I love you virus. It's actually kind of clever how it worked. So it would come as an email attachment named loveletterforyou.txt.vbs. However, the author knew that the .vbs would be truncated by the email app. So you would just think it's a love letter named loveletterforyou.txt. When you opened it, it would mail itself to everyone in your contact list, overwrite your personal files with the virus, and steal your passwords and stuff. It infected approximately 45 million machines in 10 days, and since it disrupted major institutions like Ford and AT&T, it cost up to $15 billion in damages. Like your personal computer? Fine, you lost your pirated Eminem album and your cracked version of GTA 2. But if you're on a work computer, that would cause economic damage. The creator was from the Philippines, so shout out to the Philippines. Don't make viruses and shit, just normal shout out. However, the creator, Onel D. Guzman, I hope I said that right, was not convicted of anything since there were no laws about cybercrime. There's actually a great demonstration by Nation Squid to show you how the I Love You virus worked. Also, if you didn't know, all viruses are made for Windows. Not a coincidence. In fact, I distinctly remember my dad telling me that Macs don't get viruses, and you know, I don't trust everything he says, but he's kind of right about this. Most of the viruses, in fact, all of the viruses that we're going to talk about were made for Windows. I don't know why though, if someone could comment the actual reason and not just, oh, Macs have no market share. The viruses are a pain that we have to put security measures up against. But what about the security measures that get in your way. Which is why this video is sponsored by Dr.Fone from Wondershare. Dr.Fone is an all-in-one tool for both iOS and Android to solve all kinds of problems like data recovery on your iPhone without jailbreaking your iPhone, or data recovery on your Android device, or PIN bypass on your Android device. This is a must-need tool for whenever you buy used iPhones or Androids, but the previous owner clearly didn't fully reset the phone before selling them. This includes features like Samsung FRP bypass, where you can connect it to Dr.Fone and through a process, reset it back to factory settings. And there's tons of other features like data extraction from damaged Android devices, phone transfer, WhatsApp transfer, and all this without the need for rooting your Android device. If you're like me, constantly tinkering with all kinds of phones, Dr.Fone is for you. You can check out the link in my description to try out Dr.Fone today, which supports iPhones from iPhone XR to iPhone 17 and about 6,000 different Android devices. So thank you again to Dr.Fone for sponsoring this video, and now back to our regularly scheduled show. Alright, buckle up kids, cause this one's gonna be interesting. Especially if you're a Linux fan. So the MyDoom virus was one of the most dangerous and destructive viruses to ever be unleashed. You'll know this cause if you search it up, you'll hear words like different strains, like mydoom.a or mydoom.b. That's a little freaky, can't lie. Like, especially after 2020, the word strains give me like war flashbacks. So this was again spread through email attachments, trying to mail itself to as many people as possible, but also tried to get on Kazaa, which Kazaa was Napster after Napster. But it would pose as what ChatGPT called it, tempting file names. I would look down upon people who clicked on it because you know damn well that tempting means like basically names. But you know damn well that I would have clicked on it as well. But unlike the other viruses we've looked at so far, it would do much more than just spread. It would open back doors on your computers, which would make it listen to whatever some main computer would tell it to do. Essentially turning your PC into a zombie PC, doing someone else's bidding. They gathered control over all these PCs just so they could run DDoS or denial of service attacks on the SEO group and Microsoft. Now, why was the SEO group targeted? And what the hell is an SEO group? Okay, it's some kind of company that claimed Linux infringed on their Unix copyright, and therefore tried to make Linux not free. As you can guess, this probably pissed off the techies. God knows you can't fuck with Linux, I know firsthand. So yes, like hackers targeted Sony for removing Linux. If you don't know about that, I'm gonna be big sad because I made a whole video about it. Someone targeted the SEO group, allegedly. I think the SEO group went defunct eventually anyway, so I don't think that was related. Anyways, we'd never know because the author or authors were never caught. Now we enter the 2010s where the word ransomware starts to become popular. So I don't know how old you guys are, but I remember the WannaCry ransomware. And it's called ransomware because once infected, it would encrypt all the files on your computer and put this screen up saying pay $300 worth of Bitcoin here to get your files decrypted. But paying the money wouldn't really decrypt any of your files. Computers once infected were just permanently wiped. The freakiest part about this infection was it didn't rely on email attachments or weird Kazaa files. You could literally be doing nothing and your computer could get infected. Now buckle up because this story is about to get juicy. So it turns out that WannaCry used a vulnerability in Windows where you could execute code remotely, which was discovered by the NSA and deliberately kept from Microsoft. Why? Well, my best guess is that the NSA wanted to use it in their own attack someday. However, the vulnerability got leaked, which was then used by alleged North Korean actors to create WannaCry. Microsoft had actually just patched the vulnerability before WannaCry hit, but no one updates their PC on time, and that is why you need to keep your PC up to date, people. Now there were other instances of similar ransomware like NotPetya, which was not really ransomware, it was just designed to f up Ukrainian computers, made by, you guessed it, the Russian government, allegedly. I don't understand politics or anything, but a lot of attacks starting from the 2010s were like big governments trying to mess each other up. But in recent times, there hasn't been a huge virus in the computer world. So what changed from the era of accidentally downloading ransomware from Kazaa to today? Which is pretty safe. Well, for one, Microsoft really started to up their security game with XP. Windows XP Service Pack 2 was a landmark development where a lot of inherent security flaws were patched. Things like data execution prevention and Windows Firewall made your PC much more secure. Windows 7 upped the game with ASLR and Credential Guard, which I don't really know what those things mean. They just made Windows more secure is all you need to know. But yeah, Windows was and has always been the primary target of viruses. Which is why, by the way, Windows throws like a bajillion updates at you every time you restart. And they don't give you a choice. It's security patches, you probably shouldn't ignore them. Which is also why, by the way, you shouldn't be using outdated software like Windows 10, where Microsoft doesn't really provide security patches for it anymore. While the chances are low, it is possible for someone to find an exploit and it goes unpatched. You could end up losing everything. So either upgrade to Windows 11 or switch to Linux, because Linux doesn't really get viruses. Or switch to Mac. You know, I'm an Apple shill and Macs do not get viruses. So So what have we learned, kids? Don't open strange email attachments from strangers. About last year, I would keep getting these emails like, oh, we want to sponsor your YouTube channel, and it would always be companies that you'd want to work with, like Ray-Ban or Razer. And they would always say some ridiculous amount that they were going to pay me instead of me saying what I wanted to get paid. And they would send over the contract, which was just an executable exe. Now, a lot of YouTubers like me would be desperate for money, so they would exploit that by offering crazy amounts of money. Of course, I never discovered what the exe did because I never opened it. I'm not a dummy. But these kind of scams still happen. Also, always keep your computer up to date because Microsoft keeps discovering these vulnerabilities and patching them. And most importantly, if you really want to keep yourself secure from viruses, just don't use Windows. And subscribe to this channel.